the operating environment. Then Mona will come and talk about the JSIF Safe Passages project. Then Mrs. Gallimore Vernon will give her perspective, and I would speak to some extent as well about the integration of road safety as part of the health and family life curriculum. Oh. All right, so just some more details on the Safe School policy very quickly. The objective is really to achieve safe, secure, child-friendly learning environments. You'll notice that it's not limited to the physical boundaries of the school, but also it advocates for a protective buffer between the school and surrounding public spaces, representing a geographic area to be denoted as the safe school zone. Right? So the safe school zone, some more details on it, is really, it includes every school, and it extends to a 500-meter radius of the boundary of the school premises. Within this area, it's proposed that there be specified offenses that will attract a higher penalty by reason of being committed, of course, within close proximity or to a high concentration of children. Some lessons we've learned so far that I think may be applicable to what we've been discussing so far for road safety is that school safety, and in particular child safety, is everybody's business. And that's one thing we've been pushing in education to get everybody on board, making it everybody's business. Establish a national schools safety framework, and also focusing on effective strategies, protection, prevention, early intervention, and also the matter of crisis management. Okay. So ASP Minto spoke to this briefly, but I want to just provide some more details. The National HFLE coordinator should have been here, but she's unable to make it. So essentially, she sent me this bit of information I wanted to share. Safety and security is now a theme in the health and family life education curriculum, and it covers a wide range of topics, including road safety. Now, the previous themes were, or the existing themes are self and interpersonal relationships, sexuality and sexual health, appropriate eating and fitness, and managing the environment. Now, the integration of road safety, the module on road safety will be integrated at both the primary and the secondary level. So we'll span grades 1 to 9. And at primary, it will be integrated into different topics. But at secondary, it will be dealt with more explicitly. I understand there will be a specific module on road safety in the secondary curriculum, while the primary curriculum they will have a number of unit topics that will address road safety. Now, of course, a learner-centered approach to teaching will be used as students will explore and practice safety principles of the home, school, and the community to ensure, of course, that there is protection of self, but also protection of others. The draft curricula is currently being finalized for consultation with key stakeholders, and they project that these consultations will take place in January 2018 with a view to have the curriculum completed by March 2018. So the components of road safety would be in that finalized curriculum. So I'll probably come back to the way forward after Mona has shared. Just have some pointers I want to share to close the session. But I want to invite Mona now to come and share about the JSIF Safe Passages project, and then we'll take Mrs. Gallimore Vernon. Is this working, Tash, now?
It should be? Okay, great. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Here to present very quickly on the ICDP Safe Passages project. Now, in 2014, the government of Jamaica and the World Bank signed an agreement for $42 million to be spent across 18 communities in 7 parishes. And largely that project will be focused on 3 main areas: infrastructure development, social services, as well as technical assistance to government agencies. And so one of the communities that we worked in was actually the Maxwell Park community in Kingston, with just over 5,000 persons spread across just over 1,400 households. The community was unique in terms of just the sheer number of school children who literally lived and commute to that community to access schools. We had at least 2 primary schools, 1 high school, 2 technical vocational institutions, 2 children's homes, and of course 1 high school was there. So over 2,300 students actually converge in our community each day to access a range of facilities. And so as we were delivering a range of services in that community, GSAT programs, summer camps, vocational skills training programs, we were faced with the issue that there were some significant challenges facing the community as it relates to student safety, both on and off the compound. And so they mentioned things such as speeding, traffic injuries, lack of street signs and signals, and a host of other things that were mentioned. But of course, sadly, it was only anecdotal. They had no data that existed. And so we pretty much wanted to explore a bit more about these issues. And so in March 2017, a consultant was engaged, and we wanted to look specifically at how we could study or provide a baseline on the current level of student safety in Maxwell Park, to explore as well the protective factors that contribute to our student safety, and of course make recommendations for interventions to improve student safety. Over 16 focus group discussions were held, 13 with students and 3 with other stakeholders, and over 285 students were engaged in these focus group discussions. Maxwell Park have some really serious challenges at the moment, and sadly, on the actual routes that the children used to go to school, 2 murders were actually committed since the year started, and that of course added to the level of insecurity in the community. There was also a host of illegal providers of services, illegal taxis, illegal buses, absence of JUTC buses. In fact, it's one of those communities in Jamaica where they protested against the use of JUTC buses. It's one of the only communities in Kingston where the JUTC bus is absent. And they were stoned in an area called Waterhouse. So they were quite militant that no JUTC bus would be allowed to run on this particular route. Sidewalks were of low quality, road issues as well. And the survey revealed that most of the students were walking to school, an equal amount of students walked to schools as well as took the bus. A large number of them were unaccompanied, largely males, and of course, they were most afraid of what would happen to them on the roads after school. As you can see from the data, 70% of them felt like something bad will most likely happen to them after school. The parents agreed unanimously that their children were not safe. And so, in their own words, the environment in terms of the sidewalk was used and described as being nasty, filthy, dirty, dead animals, too narrow, cracked animal waste, rough. And the roads, potholes, flood when it rains, rough parts and smooth parts. Maxfield Avenue was seen as particularly bad, as well as it was quite rocky. In terms of road safety, the community was characterized by reckless driving, especially with the number 82 buses that were on the route, inadequate crossings, inadequate cross guards, illegal transport operators, lack of signage, and of course the lack of pedestrian crossing. And we have some photographs which just show you what was happening in the community here. You would see that the sidewalks would be blocked by construction debris, and so they had to resort to walking in the streets. The sidewalk was also blocked by vegetation and also by structures. Entire sidewalk was being blocked by vendors. And of course, These were semi-permanent structures as well. And so the vendors, seizing an opportunity, decide to build a beautiful flat piece of land, was the sidewalk. And so they established their structures, and they were proud to put in their French windows and their French doors on their structures. So as you can see, it's not very just typical. It's well painted, well secure, and they're very proud of it with their names across the top. But it's of course, on the sidewalk. This particular area was noted as a very, very high-risk area, and the kids were particularly afraid of this area. And so one night, I decided to go by and to see it for myself. One day, but of course, I really did not want to exit my vehicle in the day, so I went back in the evening. What happens here is that there is a company that is a private operator into our solid waste management, and the trucks are parked. In the mornings, what happens is that the trucks will back out onto the main road, and the kids will be passing by. There's no sidewalks, and so it's very hard to see a child who's like 3 feet, 4 feet tall behind a heavy truck. So it's particularly very dangerous for students, but nevertheless, they are so afraid to cross the street that they prefer to stay and take the risk with the trucks. This particular area as well was seen as particularly dangerous both to motorists and pedestrians. There is an area there where the students have to cross the road, and of course there's no crossing, no signs, and the 82 vehicles obviously plan that route. Minimum speed that I observed was like 60, 70 miles per hour, kilometer per hour on that route. And that was me in my vehicle trying to drive a little bit fast to catch him when he stops, to take a photograph. On this particular road, the taxi drivers would compete with the pedestrians as the sidewalks had less potholes than the road. And so, of course, to try to avoid the potholes, they would, of course, drive on the sidewalks as well. And so the general findings was that the road signals and markings were absent and inadequate, with motor vehicles, illegal operators of transportation, extreme violations, and I said extreme violation of the road traffic regulations. Where schools were concerned, the absence of cross guards, drop-off zones, limited parking capacity, absence of pedestrian crossing or crosswalks, very, very, very poor perception of safety by both the students, parents, teachers, just everyone. And of course, the use of roadways was largely normalized. When the students were asked for the solutions, they felt like stoplights would help. Quite a few of them also mentioned prior. The school bus, police patrol, walking with their parents, wearing seat belts, and I mentioned, of course, walking with their parents, because they felt like, boy, this certainly would help to ease the situation. And so what we did in 2017 was to look at, given all the issues combined, look to see how we could, within the existing project framework, find a solution to address not only the issue of safety as it relates to the road, but also general public safety. And so we identified within the Maxwell Park community 2 kilometers of road that we felt like had the highest level of risk, and we would at least look at it from both a social point of view as well as the infrastructure upgrade. And so our approach to Safe Passages program has 2 main dimensions: the engineering aspect, and of course, the social programs. Under the ICDP project, we will be doing upgrading to the roads and the sidewalk, zinc fence removal project, establishing of green spaces, strengthen the solid waste management system, work along with the JPS to establish street lighting and other traffic calming measures. And of course, as well, too, we will be looking at selecting and deploying route wardens, a walking school bus program, public education, capacity building of stakeholders. And yesterday, having heard about the X-Mark the Spot program from Dr. Tortello, I think her name is, and the IRA program, we are very, very eager as well to explore, integrate that program into our program. And here is the route. So it's 2 kilometers of roadway extending from Normandy Boulevard all the way down to Waltham Park Road, as well as from Maxwell Avenue onto Ricketts Crescent. So actually 3 schools are directly on that route. Maxwell Park Primary School, the principal is here, Rosso Primary School, as well as the Norman Manley High School. And I mentioned earlier that those 3 schools have over 2,300 students collectively attending those institutions. In our design, we spoke yesterday about the 3 E's, but we actually have 5 E's. Education, as we mentioned earlier, the engineering aspects, but also enforcement, encouragement, and a very robust M&E framework. So our conclusion is that you definitely need to focus on not only infrastructure, it matters, but you have to also enhance road safety and general public safety by looking at prevention services, including capacity building, mediation, training, and related social services. This is my son, and I have him here because he was the photographer. He did all the photographs. And I wanted to include him because I wanted to see it from his point of view. And so I had him walking along with me on the route or drive and said to me, okay, show me what are the issues that you see on the route. And it was amazing that exactly what he saw as issues were what the students were also saying. And so I had to commend him because he said to me as well too that his job is for free on this occasion. And so I want to thank him and the students from Maxwell Park Primary, the students from the Russell Primary and Norman Manley High School, as well as the principals who shared with us their stories and their experiences. And we hope certainly that this will help to alleviate their current distress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mona. I'm going to invite now Mrs. Gallimore Vernon, Principal, Maxwell Park Primary School. She will give her perspective, just not a PowerPoint, but in terms of being a school leader within the context of the road safety issues and other issues that have been mentioned by Mona.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am here to share our story at Maxwell Park Primary School. And our story at Maxwell Park Primary School is also the story at Norman Manley High School and also at Rosso Primary. I am going to be repeating quite a number of things which was already said by Ms. Suho, because yes, they came in and they asked us what it is, what are our concerns, what are we feeling, what are we hearing, and we were able to share with them what we felt, what we saw, and what we heard. So here is the story, live and direct. At Maxwell Park Primary, it was good that Ms. Suho started out speaking about the crime and violence in the area. That is our reality. Our children, they live it. Many of our students are fatherless. Many of them have fathers who are teenagers themselves, and they are not there. They're either dead or in prison. Many of the households are female-led, so you know that in itself is a struggle. Last month, you know, we were going on, and I heard, I've just been there. January will be my 2 years, and I heard that Maxwell Park, within our community, we were having a season of peace, but this peace was broken. We have felt it directly. One morning we came to school, and a dead body was on the field where our children play. That's the only safe space because we do not have a playing field. So that was our haven for children to play. A dead body was found there. 2 days after, because of that dead body, we are told that there was a retaliation. So we dismissed school at about 1:30. And as soon as we dismissed school, a young man, 18 years old, got killed. Our children, many of them saw the body lying on the ground. That is our reality. road safety. I have never seen anything of the sort. We have some 82 buses, and I call them buses from hell. They drive without any care for the passengers who are in the vehicles, those that are on the road, and the children that are crossing the street. We have a four-way, 1, 2, 3, four-way. We have no signage. So when they come around the corner, as a driver, in the mornings, I just have to kind of back over because whatever they have to do, they will do it to get you out of the way and to reach where they have to go. So we are under siege when it comes to those small buses. And in speaking to the police, because we have we have a good relationship with the police or school safety resource officers. And from time to time, they would come. But when you speak to them, they tell us that they're having challenges with vehicles. They do not have the vehicles to come on the road to be patrolling and to assisting with the crossing of our students. Mrs. Sue also pointed to the sidewalks. Yeah, but we have shops, big shops, that are set up very early. So our children walk in the street. They're competing with the older children. We're at the primary school. The older children and everybody's just walking in the street. The cars are coming without care for the users of the road. So we really need some assistance in getting those sidewalks really cleared. Yeah, we don't want to take away the people's livelihood, but something must be done where it is. Something must be done. I think the government has to really take a stand as to provide some access to these people so that their livelihood can continue, because many of them would have children coming to these schools, and sometimes as female-led households, they are the sole breadwinners. So I don't know if the shops could be pushed back. I really can't think about what is that needs to be done, but I know that something must be done so that our children can be safe. Poor lighting. The lighting on the street is extremely poor. I don't know if they were there, and crime and violence, you don't want the lights, so you lick them out. So that could be, but I think that really needs to be taken care of, so the lighting could be a little bit better. The potholes. I am not knocking government, but sometimes I see some very small potholes, and we do nothing until they become craters. And that is when actions are taken. So I'm thinking that we really need to be doing something about filling in these potholes so that the buses, the yellow buses, the bus from hell, don't have to drive on the sidewalk to get to where they want to go. And we think we really need the foliage on the road. It is overgrown, and it is not cut as regularly as it should. So we're believing that if that is taken care of, our children would want to use the sidewalk, the little that is left of the sidewalks, a little bit more. Some solutions that we would propose. Signage. We need much more signage. We need pedestrian crossing. We need crossing guards. If there's a four-way, our children, they access Maxfield Park. So you have the Maxfield Park itself. Then you have those children that are coming from Walton Park. They would have to cross the road. And children coming as far as from Spanish Town, they really need someone to assist them in getting to school safe. It was sometime last year that one of our students was going home, and a taxi man mounted the sidewalk and hit him from the sidewalk. So yes, we are under a lot of stress. And our children are really being traumatized. And if it was in my community, would say we're dramatized. Yes, we are traumatized and dramatized there. What we have to do is to help our students to understand their environment. We have to help them to maneuver the little that they have off the sidewalks. So what we do is to practice. We have what is known as the school-wide positive behavior intervention and support system that we utilize in our school. And we look at 3 core values, that of being safe, that of being responsible, and that of being respectful. When we teach them these core values, safety, what does it look like? So if we practice in the mornings, we have a little thing that we say, so we listen with our ears, so we want them to be listening to what is happening. We want them to be seen with their eyes, because you have to be looking around you so that you're able to cross the street safely. And then we go through this on a daily basis, just reminding them what it is that they need to do in order to be safe. We also teach them how to be responsible. Being responsible, that you just don't dash across the street. You have to look up and down. You have to be concerned about the other users of the street. So we teach them that. And also how it is that they must be respectful. We not only teach it within the school where we go over and we verbalize, but we put pictures on the outside of our walls. So we're not only sharing with our children, we're sharing with the wider community. So we put our core values on our wall on the outside. And if you can't read, because, we have to cater to the total man, some persons are readers, some are not. So we put pictures so you can see it. So we put a crossing guard, and the crossing guard with his sign, and you see the children lining up and going across the street, lining up and getting into the bus. So we want our children to understand that you can help yourself. Don't just rely on the crossing guard. Yes, we want the crossing guard. We want the signage. But because those are not there right now, I hear, and I'm depending on JCF always come through for us. So we're just waiting on them to come and assist us in marking the street, ensuring. And sometimes what is happening, the few markings that are there, they are so pale that we really need to come back and to brighten up the area, put a pedestrian crossing so that our children are safe. So as we go through and as we help our children, beautiful little souls, that this is our future, and if we kill our future, then where will we be? So as we go through the years and as we await the interventions from JSIF and any other stakeholder that will come on board to assist us, we wait patiently. Mrs. Mona Suho and the Ministry of Education, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gallimore-Vernon. Just to wrap up, the way forward is that we transform schools and their surroundings into safe zones using a multi-layered, multi-sectoral approach, and of course utilizing public-private partnerships. I would also want to recommend, and I think Dr. Jones already had that in mind as well, that we establish a working group that pulls together all stakeholders involved in the planning, implementation, and evaluation of programs and interventions related to road safety and schools or children in general. Also, to link what we're doing with the school improvement planning process. Our school leaders over a 3 to 5 year period engage in developing a school improvement plan for their schools. And so much of what Mrs. Gallimore-Vernon mentioned as a principal would have been a part of her school improvement plan in terms of improvement in teaching and learning, but also general student achievement and student performance and their overall development. And finally, to engage school leaders, teachers, students, parents as advocates and innovators in road safety and the child health initiative as well. Thank you very much, and I trust that you found this session engaging as we move forward together. Thank you.
Andrew, more than engaging, to use the words of my good friend here, both traumatized and dramatized. We sometimes don't even begin to understand what trauma our people are going through in different areas of life. We just have to continue and persevere so we can make the lives of our people a little different. Yeah. Thank you very much for the insight. Tremendous insight. In respect of going forward, I've already written to a number of you, and I'm going to ask yourself and Mrs. Suho. I sound like somewhere in London. To come to a meeting next week, Thursday, right here, upstairs, 3rd floor, 10 o'clock, 1 hour. So we can meet together and begin to plan the way forward. The rest of you know already been alerted. So we have a date, a time, and a place. I know it's the middle of Christmas, but we like to strike while the iron is hot. Roundtable discussion, coffee break, wrap up. I think we are almost way past that now. We'll entertain a couple of questions and comments. Avi has to leave shortly, so I want to say a word to him before he leaves. But questions? Tariq, Jeff, go ahead.
That was just, fantastic, the presentations from the two of you, so heartfelt, and that's all around the world. We work, my own NGO, we work in so many countries, and that kind of leadership from head teachers and the parents at schools is probably the most key thing. Being alert to those problems and being passionate about making the change is just the key to change and success. So that was really inspiring to hear. And Ms. Soho. So it was fascinating because that's so similar to what we're talking about doing. So I didn't quite catch. I'm just curious a little bit more. What's the timeline for putting in these improvements? What's the sort of budget you're talking about, and where did the funding come from? Is it government, World Bank? How did it come together, and those details?
So the Safe Passages project was not initially a part of the project design. So what we had planned was to do general upgrading to the road networks, etc. But then in doing our community engagement, we realized that it was an issue. And so we will be funding the project from monies that we have approved by the World Bank and the GOJ. And so we have those monies already approved, and the design is now in progress in terms of designing the roadway improvements as well as the sidewalks. It also includes improvement to sewage systems and also to drainage, etc. So it's a very comprehensive, integrated infrastructure package that we are now linking the Safe Passages into. So it will be funded by the World Bank loan as well. And they're very, very interested and very keen to fund this particular project under this. So the money is already available and already approved.
That's good news, because that's something we've been pushing for years.
Right.
It's great to hear. And
right.
What's the timeline? Is it 18 months, 2 years, how long?
We will begin to roll out the social programs in January. We already begun some of the zinc fence removal, but the large works project will not take place until the end of 2018. But we have approved funding for like the walking school bus, the route wardens, etc. So it's approved funding.
And sorry, just to follow up. You may have covered it. Sorry, because I might have missed the beginning of it. But to what extent do you have scope within that funding package to be able to say, we've done the analysis around these kinds of schools, and actually, as we see it, these are the priorities that need to be put in place for a number of schools, and you then take that and just take that initiative and use that funding to do those interventions as you see it. What amount of autonomy is there?
Right. Now, the project, in terms of the macro picture, the project actually targets 18 communities across 7 parishes. A total of 40 schools are within that catchment area. And given the issue with Maxwell Park, we decided that Maxwell Park would be a pilot. And of course, it has largely been a process. It was not actually in the original design, so we have to be designed as we go along. But certainly we're looking at, given that the need is broad-based, it is something that we certainly want to scale up as well to the remaining schools and the remaining communities. So start with Maxwell Park. It is of course, a fertile ground to be scaled up because the project actually ends in 2020.
Pat, so it was your suggestion and observation to go back to the bank and say we want to allocate this percentage of the project to safety,
or reallocate within the existing.
And then they were happy.
Yes,
They were
yes.
happy. They were happy.
They were
with
happy
that.
to do that.
Wow.
So having already written the project menu, we went and spoke to the bank about the fact that this is as emerged an important area, and so we were actually allowed to reallocate funding to the Safe Passages project. And the pictures were quite convincing. As well.
Tariq?
Yes, good afternoon again. I'm not sure if you were here earlier. I'm the motorcycle guy, Tariq Kiddo, Back to Basics Motorcycle Safety Mission. There's something I've been itching to mention, to bring to the table from yesterday as well, a particular phenomenon in Westmoreland. Now, we do motorcycle safety workshops, for those who haven't heard. We go out and we do training, inner city outreach, etc. The very first large workshop we did, it was in White House, Westmoreland. We were confronted by a dilemma because we put out flyers, we had people recruiting. On the day of the event, 2 young riders came up to the gate of Sandals White House. They were 15 years old. 15 means they don't have a learners. 15 means they're not legal to be on the road. But in that community, it is not even rare that you have people who are riding. And we were the first dilemma I want to bring our attention. We're talking about every child, every journey, is that in Westmoreland, in Western parishes, the problem is starting a lot younger than we're even beginning to appreciate. The problem of, I mean, when you say children, we speak of children as pedestrians. These people are motorists at 15. And the challenge to us was, do we even allow them into the workshop to get the training? Do we allow them to do the practical exercises? And we opted on that day, because of liability, is just to tell them to go home, carry home their bikes, but come back to the workshops. So they got the training because they're at risk. Now, to show you how it's even more relevant to what is being discussed right here now, is when we went to another parish, St. Elizabeth, we got a bigger shocker, where police were telling us of one school where as many as 24 motorcycles will be parked outside that high school, because you had young people who were coming to school, and this was essentially their only mode of reliably getting to school. And it poses an even bigger dilemma. Now, the principal who was sitting beside me yesterday, she says, but you can't really bend the law, right? This morning I spoke to her. I said, by the way, you come from Clarendon. Have you seen it at your school? She says, yes. In Clarendon, it's the same thing. You have people who are riding to school because essentially living remotely, they're not going to be able to get to school reliably, right? So there are a few questions that it poses in this vision of how to make safe schools. When we talk about having school bus systems and all of that, understand that it would be a decade before any of that gets to Westmoreland, realistically. So if these people, if children are at a certain age are trying to solve the problem, there needs to be some kind of system, something to address that. How are you going to deal with it? In some countries, in some jurisdictions, children, quote unquote, are allowed to drive with restricted licenses from as young as 15. Jamaica, we opt. I mean, I personally, as someone who is about to be a parent and who hasn't figured out the child seat as yet, right? I'd prefer my son to take a bus to school, and I hope Jamaica gets there by the time. I mean, even if he does own a bike because his daddy owns one, still, getting to school, I wish he'd be safe. But in the interim, there is a huge section of the island where the motorcycle problem is starting as young as 12 years old, and some even younger. So it's something I want us to think about. The next question that it poses, which came up yesterday, is when you think of road safety, when you see these issues where children are becoming old enough to drive a motorcycle, right, to school, it becomes a question of driver education in schools, that transition between where a child is a pedestrian and a child is an adult. How seriously do we take that? Because while the school bus system is a good solution in Kingston and in built-up areas, a system of driver education would filter much faster in the western parishes, looking on at someone who is in fifth form, who is 15 years old, and telling them they have to reach a certain standard, and perhaps we can consider having a learner's license or something, as would happen in some parts of the U.S. where it's remote. So it's something I've never heard it discussed in any public forum. It's happening, and it's happening in numbers. And it's not a wayside. There are children as young as 15 who have died this year, motorcyclists. And in every year since I've been tracking it, there actually are fatalities in the West in this age group. Motorcyclists. Yes.
Interesting question, Tarek. I suppose the first issue really is to face the reality that this is what is happening on the ground. The second question is, how do you deal with it? The first answer is that under the current law, it's illegal. It's as simple as that. Do you change the law to accommodate people's reality? That's a deep philosophical question. That is something we have to engage the parliamentarians about.
It's a very serious issue. Just to interject, if I may, the police officer we came across in St. Elizabeth who told us about it, he came up with an interesting solution, quasi-solution if you want to call it, or some kind of, I don't know what the term is, but one day he went by the school and with two officers, blocked in every single motorcycle that was parked out there, went to the classrooms and called all it says everybody who rode a motorcycle, carried them out onto the corridor today. He looked at me and said, look here, if I see one young man on a motorcycle without a helmet, without safety gear, I'm coming for all of you. And that was his intermediary solution, because he didn't want to stop them from coming to school. So in other words, as a social intervention of sorts, he used that odd situation to create an environment where none of those students ride without their helmets. Not one. No, as you said, that's not really a solution because it's against the law.
Yeah,
but it shows the depth, because that police officer may not even wish to come into a room like this and say that he did that, because he's supposed to uphold the law strictly, and there are a lot of people who wouldn't appreciate that circumstance.
And then you open a Pandora's box.
Yes.
So you do it for Westmoreland because there's a problem. And a fellow in Tivoli Gardens said, well, okay.
Yes. So his solution is not really a solution, but it just shows the complexity of the dilemma. Because at the end of the day, when a policeman has to write a traffic ticket that bothers his conscience, that pen is going to move very slowly or not at all. That's what it's going to boil down to. When the policeman's conscience is moved by the situation, if I write this ticket, this young man is not going to get his education. What do you think is going to happen to the pen?
Well,
run out of ink.
The thing is that as a responsible national organization, I don't know how either the Prime Minister or the Minister of Works or the Minister of Education would respond to me coming to him with a proposal either to allow people to break the law, compromise, or to change the law. I don't know how they respond. I am fairly certain, almost 100%, that they're going to say, what is this you're coming with?
Yes, in the context.
So the question is, if it is unlikely for the parliamentarians to change the law, is there any leeway that the police would have to act in a quote-unquote compassionate way? And I don't see how that can be sustained. A window exists under the current Road Traffic Act, not under the new one. All right? The current Road Traffic Act, I'm told, doesn't actually specify the minimum age for our learners. The law doesn't. I'm told that the law does not. I don't know if Mr. Anderson I'm not
can
sure.
confirm.
Victor?
My understanding is that it is in theory possible for somebody to be granted a learner's at 15 years old under the current Road Traffic Act. However, the tax office makes the decision, or at some policy level, the decision is made that it's only granted at 17, full stop. A few years ago, it would be 16 and a half. In other words, you could get your learner's license before you turn 17, because you need to learn before you can get your license.
Yeah, but Tarek, if I understand you correctly, it's not a problem for 15-year-olds.
No.
It's a problem of not accepting the reality that you're not supposed to be driving under age 17. So a 12-year-old with a bike or a 10-year-old with a bike is going to want to ride a bike.
No, you can't.
So the frequency may not be the same at 10 as at 15. So it's a very difficult situation. Victor, is there a specific age under the law currently?
I am not sure about that, Lucian. I suspect Tariq may be right. But definitely under the bill that's before the Parliament, it's something like 16 and a half is the earliest you can apply for a learner's permit. And you can get 17 and a half, and then you can get a driver's license as of 18. If Tariq can help to point us to jurisdictions where this is done for younger persons, then perhaps we can do some research and try and influence the process going forward. But as of now, I don't have that information.
Well, I can do some research and forward the information. I didn't actually get the specifics. I just recall from anecdotally current states basically in the US in states where you have literally, you can have 40 miles in between schools. You know, that's something that happens. Not sure where else. But just to be clear, I'm not necessarily saying I would want my son or anybody else at 15 or 16 riding a bike to school. That's not what I'm necessarily advocating for. I'm just pointing at the problem exists. And the problem is not just does a child ride a bike. The problem is how does a child get to school reliably? And if UNICEF representatives were here, they realize that it is a big problem. For me, that's it. How does a child get to school? So in the places, the jurisdiction where they have come up with driving, like a junior driving license, you may have a situation where the headmaster of the school has to approve for that child to get the license. You can have you definitely have situations where they're not allowed to drive after 5 o'clock, after sundown. You have all kind of things that would go with it. As I said, for me, it is not about allowing people to break the law. It's a simple question. Can we make sure they get to school?
No,
I'll do some research for you.
I understand. So if we get research, then we can respond. But I'll bear it in mind.
Yes.
Mark?
Yeah, I just did a little bit of Googling whilst you guys were talking. And it looks as if the age for a 50cc moped, which I think would be the favoured form of transport, would be either 15 or 16 in Europe and in North America. So I would support that as long as there was a limit of, say, 50cc for a moped for someone to get to school, I think it's the only way forward. Because if there isn't the infrastructure that supports kids getting to school, and it's the only mode of transport, and they live 6 miles away, what do they do? I know Elaine said this morning that she used to walk 3 miles to school and 3 miles back when she was a primary school kid. So kids do walk to school. Yes. And you're right, you can't condone breaking the law. But on the other hand, I think that if you do go to the Prime Minister and say, well, it needs to be reviewed, because this is the reality of living in rural Jamaica as opposed to living in the reality of, say, London or New York, where there's public transport, there are proper school buses. We have to look at our reality yes. on the island and adapt the law accordingly, or provide an alternative. And if we can't, then we end up with a situation that you've got.
Fair enough.
If I was to make a suggestion, really, I mean, I really want this Road Traffic Act passed as soon as possible. I don't want to say or do anything to delay it, seeing what's going on our roads. But if there's some window by which this kind of mechanism can be put in, if it's even one paragraph that makes it a possibility to set up a junior driving system, I think it would be worth it. As one final point, bear in mind that the bad habits that riders are picking up in Westmoreland are starting at this age. So we would do much better using a junior driver system to inculcate better driving values amongst teenagers. It would be better to kind of get them ahead of the curve, so to speak, than the street corner. But that's the point.
Both Victor and Paula have access in terms of, and influence in terms of the legislation. The question is whether there's any window of opportunity left. That's the issue. I wouldn't have a problem if the the data and the research can show that a child at 15 can be granted a driver's license. Because you could not do it for motorcycles alone. I don't know how would you word the law to allow for motorcycles alone and not for motor.
You could do it for mopeds alone.
Okay.
You could.
Okay.
That is done. So in other words, we're saying a motorcycle that's literally 50 cc's, 30 cc's.
And we have those in Jamaica, 50 and 30?
Yes, man, we do. We do, and electric. So it's not technically, it's possible. But the question is whether there can be a line inserted for
well,
junior
I'll leave to
driver's
Victor and
license.
Paula to investigate and see
Yes.
if there's any window open. That's the most we could say at this point in time. Fair comment. Any other comments? Yes, Mark.
I'd like to help you with a question that you raised yesterday. In fact, the lady that was here that you asked about it was this correlation between homicide and fatalities on the road. And I think that was a very interesting question that you posed. And I think that in the discussions that we've had in the last couple of days, we've said, you know, gosh, why are we worrying about casualties on the road when we've got 1,600 people being murdered a year? But I actually don't see a separation between the two. I see a correlation between the two, because in many societies where we are able to sort out law on the road and law on the pedestrian footway, then we start to tackle some of the larger problems in that we train through education and through enforcement, of course, discipline to take certain courses of action. And therefore, I believe that both are linked. And I thought that the presentation in relation to Maxfield Park School was a classic case, because we were at 1 minute talking about no footway, kids walking on the road, and mad bus drivers, and at the same time, 2 murder victims in the park by the school. And that, again, it shows that integral link between the two. So I don't think it is healthy to separate it. I think that there's a lot of good work being done. Yes, it needs to be joined up. But I think the fact is that if you start to sort out the roads and get people to obey the law and educate people, then you will naturally see eventually that the murder rate will start to dip as well.
Good point, Mark. And in fact, Elizabeth Ward from the Violence Prevention was imploring us to make sure we made a link, because she's convinced that if you can fix the roads, we can do something with the murder rate. So it's something we need to pursue. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I mean, at the World Health Organization, the department that's responsible for road safety, it's called the Division of Violence and Injury Prevention. They very much see it as one linked thing. So it's absolutely correct. And with this issue, we know the solutions, right? So we can lead with this, and then it inspires the violence, which is a somewhat more intractable problem without solutions that are quite as transparent.
So maybe we need to appoint Paula to the National Security Council. Any other comment or sir?
Okay, Sergeant Bennett, the road safety person, the air traffic. I'm the only police sitting in this room, and I'm a sergeant, but I can't make what Mr. Kidu said just slip through like that. Because as a police, one of our fundamental duty is to enforce the laws in Jamaica. And as it relates to your presentation with the youngster and the bikes, the law, I'm not able to say exactly which section of law said, but a person riding or driving a motor vehicle, and a bike is a motor vehicle, on any road in Jamaica must have to attain the age of 18. So, below 18, that person must be accompanied by somebody in respect to a learner. So,
well, as I said, as Mr. Anderson pointed out, for a license, there's a limit. There's a lowest age for a license currently is 17, but there's very little definition behind what is a provisional driver's license, aka a learner's. There's the driver's license, okay, but not the provisional driver's license, which is the learner's, doesn't actually, a lot of things are not specified about it.
Yeah, but Tarek, if you have a provisional driver's license and driving a motorcycle, aren't you supposed to have either somebody with a license behind you or beside you?
Under the new law, but under the current law, all they did, which created the mess that we're living right now. With the current law, they said that for a driver of a motor car, you're supposed to have somebody accompanying you, right? Except for if the motor vehicle is a motorcycle. In other words, they created an exception for a motorcycle. So a motorcycle doesn't have to have accompaniment under the current Road Traffic Act. And that is the loophole that has caused this mess, because effectively what you've had is 60, 70 years where the most dangerous form of motor vehicle on the road, you can just buy a learners and go and ride it. No, if you think about it, those of us who have learned to drive, you didn't learn everything from the road code book. Somebody, even if you studied the road code book, somebody had to sit beside you and point out certain things to you. So for the last 70 years, we've been allowing motorcyclists to bypass that. And I've heard people describe it as a loophole that motorcyclists take advantage of. I say I don't like that wording, because the motorcyclists never wrote the laws. The motorcyclist just buy a bike, then him say, hold on, what I need to get a license? What do I need? And then somebody tells him what to do, and that's what he does. That's what so if for the last 70 years, all I had to do was buy a bike, and then somebody said, oh, you just have to get a brown book, then that's all I'm going to do. So the error was made from 70 years ago. There's no, and other countries made the same mistake. Jamaica is not the only one. Other countries treated motorcycles as just a bike with an engine, a bicycle with an engine. And eventually they realized that can't work. So to boil down to the point, the provisional driver's license, there are a lot of things that are not clearly defined about who can get it, what age, etc. It's only the license itself, general and private, have clear age things documented in law. The new Road Traffic Act will change that, though. Yes.
Okay. There's a phrase called guided democracy. So I'm going to pick on a couple of people and ask them how they felt about the conference generally and anything they want to say. And I'm looking at Jeffrey, but I'm going to call on Melissa McTavish.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Really, I'm Melissa McTavish, Ministry of Education. I'm impressed with the forum. I thought that there was a need for this kind of collaboration. All the stakeholders at the tables were necessary. Myself, it's my first time being in a forum with dealing with road safety, and especially because it includes schools. I am a school planner, educational planner, and to tell you the truth, I'm not sure that we were always planning with this kind of, with road safety in mind. We look at road safety, we look at school planning, for example, location planning, without looking at things like road safety, which is important. And I think that it should form part of the planning process and not necessarily looking at it from implementation stage. I look forward to the technical working group that will be formed starting next week.
Okay. I'm looking at Paula, but beside her, Selena, who has a master's in transport, was trained in England. Manchester, was it? She's working with JUTC now. She used to work at NWA. She came today. She wasn't here yesterday. But Selena, any thoughts?
Oh, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Selena Mohammed Wilson. I'm wearing many hats today, NWA, Ministry of Transport, and JUTC. I just came in on the last part of the conference. Some of these conversations we've been having for years, some of these discussions have been going on for years, and I really don't see a lot of movement. There's not a lot of traction. I'm wondering why it is that we can't just do. We're always talking. No, it's true. We have a lot of discussions. We've been talking about some of these things for 10 years, and they're not being implemented. Some of them, I think, are simple fixes. We look at the school, the presentations made by JSIF and the teachers. When I look at some of the things, I feel there are simple fixes. The pedestrian crossing, the signage. I don't know. I still feel like we are not doing enough. We're not acting as quickly as we can. I mean, the Road Traffic Act, the Road Traffic Bill is one example. That's been, what, 16, 18 months, 14 months? 14 years? No, I mean, since it has been tabled. Since it has been tabled, yes. So I would just like to see more done. So.
Victor, any final thoughts? Okay. Andrew, you're new to us.
Okay, I think I'm good now. Right. Well, I found the 2 days very engaging and insightful, and found that it presents opportunities for the kind of collaboration that we need for interventions that are cross-cutting to really improve safety generally for schools, but with a specific focus on road safety, and also including not only those who are within the confines of the school community, but also those in the community at large where schools are located, and really translating from policy to action on the ground that really impacts the lives of our children. So I found it very engaging, and I'm looking forward to the follow-up work that will, the trophy project or trophy projects that will, be able to allow us to expand the initiative and make a real impact.
I know she's trying to hide, but I see her. Yannick, come forward.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think the 2-day workshop, it has been quite enlightening, insightful. And this past week, I got a chance to visit some of the schools with the team from FIA and Amend. And I think that our children really need our assistance. The schools really need our assistance. And there's a lot that can be done. I think that with this workshop, what I'm seeing with IRAP, there's a lot within this room, after this, that we can act. There's a lot of action that I think is going to come out of this. So I'm remaining positive about that. And I think as stakeholders, all the stakeholders here, we have the opportunity to push for this. So next week, Thursday and beyond, I'm looking forward to what happens with the initiative, every journey, every child. And I'm glad that this has started. And I think 2018 is going to be a great year for road safety.
Thanks. You called Arab's name, so perhaps we'll just ask Julio first, then Jeffrey, and finally Avi to have the final word, and then we're going to ask Mrs. Fletcher to say thanks to everybody.
Okay, what can I say? I made 3 presentations in these 2 days, divided into the school star rating for schools application, and the presentation that I made today focused more on the roads. And the only message that I would like to pass is that the technology and the solutions are out there. We don't have to invent anything. It's all done. It's just a willingness of putting in place what is out there. So that's my message. And from an IRAP perspective, as I said before, we are willing and eager to work with you if you have the political willingness and the desire to do things in this country. So you don't have to invent anything. We are going to come here and work holding hands with you, and things are going to be done. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks. Jeffrey?
All right. Ditto, as we say, you know? Like, Julio's from IRAP, I'm from Amend, and Avi from FIA Foundation, and we all work together. We see each other all around the world all the time, and we work together in a collaborative way, you know? And I love, listen, man, I will come here at the drop of a dime, no problem, okay? I like it. So you'll be seeing me, at least, more than you may want to. So, you know, we all collaborate, and I really sense a strong spirit of collaboration here around the table and in your culture in general, and that's what it takes. And you know, and I know I can speak for Avi and Julio. You know, if we're to the degree we can be helpful or of any use, you know, that's exactly what we're here for. So you can count on us.
Thanks. I know you can speak for Avi in English, but not in French. Avi, you have the last word.
Yeah, I'll stick to English, I think, yeah. Yeah, I suppose there's a couple of things. I mean, the first thing is, yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. You know, why isn't anything being done? And, you know, as Jeffrey says, we're waiting, we're ready to start working with you. You know, we've said that we can get a project off the ground in a couple of months. You know, there can be a couple of schools where we start working as of January, you know, so things can get done in that sense. But it's also more about, you know, how do we make sure that this is something that gets done urgently and nationwide across the country. From our perspective, you know, every journey, every child, you know, it's just a simple case of it's just basics. There's no child that should have any risk when they go to school. It's just inexcusable. You know, I'm not interested in well, I am interested in the data, but the data is one thing. The other thing is that every single child should have a safe journey to school, and any kind of complication that's thrown up on that is just an excuse. And if I really like your Prime Minister. Obviously, I think he's excellent. Having, you know, he was phenomenal in May with the event that was here. If he wants to wake up tomorrow and solve this, he could do. I mean, he could get out of bed tomorrow morning and he could say, every single child in Jamaica will have a safe journey to school. Every single road going around a school in Jamaica will have the following basic safety measures in place. You know, he doesn't have to wait for an act. He doesn't have to wait for a policy, strategy, or anything. He could flick a switch tomorrow, and we're starting the pilot work now, and it could become national policy. It's that easy. There's no, the barriers could then be removed. So it's a question of how we get to that stage, you know, and what I'm saying is that we're also willing to be here for you, to try to think of ways to put pressure on the right areas of the political establishment. It's unfair just to single out the Prime Minister, but the whole political establishment, and let's probably say the Prime Minister as well, to put pressure on to say, you know, you can do this right now. You don't have to compare it to homicides or anything, you know. They're issues that are incredibly important and need to be addressed. This is just something you can just do tomorrow. You can wake up and you can just get it done. Maybe one thing is we could think about, I don't know, I don't really know what the answer to this is, but how do we make it more visible? You know, it's one of those issues that is definitely there. We went to school, as Yannick said, we went to schools this week, and you could see the situation for children going to schools everywhere here, and they're not being given the safety that they need, and that was obvious. But it's still not visible, and it's still not directly. If there's a murder, if something horrific happens, you know, it's right out there on the front pages. It's in everyone's faces. If this is happening, it's not all that immediate. You know, it needs to be the perhaps a way of really broadcasting it so that, you know, nobody can hide away from it. But I don't quite know how that's done, but we're obviously willing to help from our perspective with what we can do, and that's something that our campaigning tries to do as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's it's something that's probably a bit frustrating when you see how easy it could be done, but also gives you a lot of hope and optimism as well to think, you know, this could be solved very, very quickly. This element of it, there's obviously so many other issues. The whole complexity of road safety is there as well. That also needs to be addressed. But this is something that can be at the forefront of all of it. This can be a win that everyone has really quickly. So that's what I suppose is so exciting about it all as well.
I mean, just to second that, we work in a lot of countries, big countries, Brazil, Nigeria. We work, big, complicated countries. And what Avi said is true. You have the potential to solve this issue in this country because of the will you have and because of the size of the country. You know, you can solve this issue in the next few years. And I completely agree that if you solve this issue, then people will be inspired that you can solve the violent crime issue as well.
One of the lasting impressions we have, both myself and Paulo, have of the conference in Brazil a couple of years ago was Zelika's stirring speech. No more excuses. No more excuses. No more excuses. Mrs. Fletcher?
Okay. So I am to close. Well, wow. 2 days of intense discussions, participation, as in the middle of this Christmas season where my cake would be baked already, I have had to be here, talking about really some serious matters. And even though I know on my left, my good friend has said things are taking long. You remember the days when she was at NWA and we said we want X and Y, don't know here, no money, but we won't go there. Because I really understand that for a law to be working on it for 14 years, that's a rather long legislative process. But I think what we should look at more than anything else is that it shouldn't take more than another 3 months in 2018. And the National Road Safety Council, we promise you, we're not going to let things die. We're going to keep at it. And I think there are some easy enough initiatives that we've heard about, some low-hanging fruit, that with our friends who have visited with us here, we can implement in short enough order. So I want to thank each and every one who has been here. Some I have to thank in absentia. Mark Connolly, Dr. Winston Delahaye, Michael Henry, Mikhail Phillips, who stayed with us for 2 days and has gotten a charge from Dr. Jones. He sat beside me, so I know that he is really willing and raring to go. And that's what this sort of collaboration does. It sort of refuels you to lead the charge. Shelley Ann Fraser, she sent her message. We're grateful for that. Our visiting friends, Avi Silverman, who is really our main partner in terms of sponsoring this particular event. And I just sense that, Avi, that you see the vision for Jamaica, you see the possibilities, and you're willing to help. And for that, we're truly grateful. Thank you ever so much. Jeffrey Witt, well, a lot of fire there and a lot of ideas as well. And because we know you love Jamaica, we're going to see you again. Rebecca Tortella, she's also not here. Julio, our friend from years back, we also thank you. And that app, we haven't been on it yet. I checked Dr. Jones, and normally he's a quick draw at these things. He hasn't been on yet, but we're really very anxious to go on and see the possibilities there. Stephen Shaw, he was here yesterday from NWA. Adriana Lavalle. There are some immediate plans that have been actioned. Dr. Jones went home yesterday and wrote an email. So something will be happening there. Other participants, Lisa Green and Paris Liao Ai. We are grateful for their input, and they're really a significant partner for us. And that marriage was fostered by none other than Earl Jarrett himself, who I think he's chairman of Mono Jure Informatics. We're also thankful that Elaine made her presence felt and spoke from the heart in her own way about her experience as a child and the fact that she endorses what we're here doing. Natalie Dreisen, a part of your team, Abby, we're also thankful that so many of you were able to brave the cold, leave it behind for a bit. It was easy to come, he says, and be with us. Andrew Francis and your team from MOE, such a well thought out presentation that brings in that whole perspective. And the participants, all of you here who have stayed with us. Mark Shields, very notable, you have stayed with us. And through Mark Shields, we have been exploring the possibility of electronic surveillance. Mark was actually a former, assistant commissioner? Deputy commissioner of JCF, the police force. So he comes with that perspective, but he's now an entrepreneur in providing solutions such as this. So I know Mark is listening very keenly because he wants to know how he can play a role in taking us along that particular path. I don't know who else I'll be leaving out, but generally to say to all participants, my team from NRSC.
Rebecca on the back.
Rebecca. Oh, yes. Thank you so much for being with us. Also my team, Victor, who helped with my presentation, and Rima, who was very instrumental, as she usually is, in doing the phone work and sending out the emails to get us all here and to help to organize the logistics. Can't leave out Procom. They make us look good. And they brought along Phase 3, who are also here doing their job for a fee, but still. Yes. I don't know if I've left. The Jamaica Pegasus Hotel for the lovely meals and the breaks that we've had, the coffee breaks that we've had. So I think I have covered everybody except for Dr. Jones.
No, you don't. Valerie Magnus, also
I
from
just
crew. Valerie Magnus, she did the decor.
Valerie Magnus,
yes.
She did the decor.
Okay, I take
the various outside broadcasts. And since I have the mic, how is your mic on? I would also like to thank Dr. Lucian Jones. A lot of people don't know. They have called the office already and asked, can I speak to Dr. Jones? And I have to tell him he's not employed to the National Road Safety Council. He doesn't sit here. He is a doctor by profession, lives in Kingston, works in Maypen. And he took the time off to come here today because it is near and dear to his heart. You know, every time I've tried to say, what am I doing in this business? Yes, things really move slow. What am I doing in here? He says we're doing God's work. So there's no answer you have after that when he says that to you. So, Dr. Jones, really, we appreciate you. We appreciate your dedication. We know you don't like this, these accolades, but really and truly, you have done a lot of, I don't know what he does at night. There's so many
I have
emails.
a wife.
Well,
two children and 4 grandchildren.
Well, that's why I don't know how you fit it all in, and I know his wife has cautioned him, about all this time he dedicates, but she's also very supportive because he wouldn't be doing all of this if he didn't have her support. But really, those emails, about 12 every night, you really wonder about. So thank you, each and every one of you. If I haven't called your name, it's because, I've really tried to cover everybody. So it's been a wonderful conference, 2-day workshop. I think we have left here invigorated. There are some immediate things we're going to follow up on in the new year. And this was a good way to bring down a team, for a team to come down, to have a broader cross-section of our stakeholders and even the wider groupings and organizations to be able to sit in a way like this and really drill down deep into some of our problems, some of the possible solutions and the way forward. So with that, I would like to say thank you all very much, and there's still a coffee break that we can partake in if you have any space left. Thank you so much.
For all those who are traveling overseas, safe travel, Godspeed. See you back here in sometime in the future. Thanks very much.